What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with my first movie review for 2026. Vacation time is officially over, and we're going to start off the year with a bang, reviewing Lupin III, the movie, The Immortal Bloodline. And because this movie is currently in limited release, courtesy of G-Kids, there will be no spoilers. But let's start with the basics. If you like this franchise, you will like this movie. It's violent, stylish, there's tons of sex appeal, daring escapes and double crosses, and I was in and out in just 93 minutes. And I got to my seat in the proverbial nick of time where I sat down and the movie started immediately, which was great for me. However, there were a lot of angry audience members who were strolling in over the course of the first 30 minutes of the movie, assuming there would be a lot of commercials and trailers like you usually see at an AMC or a Regal. And that's nearly always the case. However, I've noticed with some Japanese animation, for whatever reason, they just skip the trailers entirely. So note to self and note to anybody else, if you're going to the theater to see Japanese animation, hedge your bet and assume there's at least a chance that there might not be any trailers or commercials. In any case, Lupin III is a franchise with a ton of history. I believe this is the 13th animated feature film in the series, not to mention the hundreds of episodes of television, as well as the original manga created by Monkey Punch, which goes all the way back to 1967. But this movie is directed by Takashi Koike, if I'm saying his name correctly, making it his fifth film in the franchise, and it's been heavily promoted as being a traditionally animated movie, which might mean different things to different people. If I hear traditionally animated, I think cell animation, traditional cell animation. So I was kind of watching the whole time looking for like cheats when it comes to things like, fire or explosion, things that are difficult to animate. But whether or not they used any cheats or shortcuts, who can say? But on the whole, I would say the movie looks absolutely fantastic. But as far as the premise goes, the story is actually a prequel to the very first Lupin III movie, The Mystery of Mamo, which came out in 1978. So it's actually a great jumping on point for new viewers. Plus, the first few minutes of the movie does a brilliant job of reintroducing the five central characters that have been at the heart of the show for more than half a century. And I would argue that the movie's at its strongest during this opening sequence, but after a little downtime in the middle where it kind of sags, the movie bounces back big time for the finale with some absolutely insane action sequences. But whether you're brand new to the franchise or a seasoned pro who's been watching it since the early 70s, the appeal of this franchise is very simple and very straightforward. Lupin III, he's a lovable rogue who enjoys stealing things that can't be stolen. He's incredibly resourceful and he's a master of the last-minute double cross or getaway. And along for the ride, as always, we have his faithful companions like Daisuke Jigen, who's really good with the gun, Goemon Ishikawa, who's good with the sword, and then there's Fujiko Mine, who's basically just insanely beautiful and not entirely trustworthy. And as always, we have the ever-stoic Inspector Zenigata, who's basically been chasing this band of outlaws longer than I've been alive on this earth. But as far as the specific plot is concerned, here's what they have written over on Wikipedia. After fending off a series of skilled assassins, gentleman thief Lupin III and his band of allies follow a strange invitation to an uncharted island. When their plane is shot down, the gang is stranded and soon hunted by the island's inhabitants, past enemies, and a monstrous immortal being known as Muom, who threatens to destroy Lupin's legacy. As a deadly toxic fog settles over them, Lupin must confront his greatest enemy and his most daring escapade yet. So once again, no spoilers, but what I liked about this movie is how it scatters all the heroes across this exotic island where basically every square inch is trying to kill them, whether that's the natural wildlife or some of the traps that have been set by the main boss, as well as all these horrible monstrosities that are roaming the island. Basically, these monstrosities are made up of a lot of their past enemies, and some of them have been cybernetically enhanced, some of them have basically undergone all these horrible mutations. But pay close attention during the first 5 minutes because in basically the fastest storytelling that I've ever witnessed, they very quickly summarize who all their main antagonists are from previous adventures who are going to reappear on this island. But it's one of those things where you kind of have to hold your eyes open or you're going to miss some essential details. It's some of the fastest storytelling that I've ever seen. But once we get to the island, we get to kind of slow down and settle down and see what all these heroes are capable of. And what I like about it is how the foes that they face on this island are so goddamn powerful and so insurmountable that it puts these heroes through their paces. Sometimes in the kind of the classic episodes of Lupin III, these characters are so dashing and so charismatic and so resourceful, they kind of tap dance through their adventures without ever actually being like really challenged. If you want to see them actually challenged, where it's like 2 or 3 of them have to team up in order to take down a single foe, this will be the movie for you. And overall, it's basically just kind of tapping my fingers and just kind of riveted from start to finish. However, the billion-dollar question is, how does this iteration or this interpretation of Lupin III compare to some of the classic episodes and classic movies from the 1970s? Because in the early days, none other than Hayao Miyazaki used to work on this franchise. He directed a couple episodes, and he directed the second movie, The Castle of Cagliostro, which was my introduction to Lupin III. When I was growing up, I was always a little confused about where to start with Lupin III because there are some rights issues, and sometimes it would get released under different names. But I started with Castle of Cagliostro, which is just delightful. I mean, it's one of the most delightful animated movies ever. But if you compare any animated movie from any country, from any era, to the work of Hayao Miyazaki, nearly always it's going to be an unfair comparison, or the film in question is going to come up short because Hayao Miyazaki might be the best animator who's ever lived. I mean, it's not hyperbole to say that he's the greatest living director right now in any country. Admittedly, he's kind of retired, but back in the 1970s, holy shit, he was firing on all cylinders. But if I were to recommend a point of entry for any new viewers for Lupin III who are curious about the franchise but are kind of overwhelmed by the hundreds of episodes and all these feature films, like, oh my god, like where do I start? Well, I'm going to tell you right now where it is that you start, and you can thank me later on. But back during the series Lupin III Part 2, which actually consisted of 4 separate seasons of television, but it's all Lupin III Part 2. It's basically the Red Jacket era. If you're confused about which era of Lupin III you're talking about, look at the color of his jacket. That's usually the best indication. But during Lupin III Part 2, the Red Jacket era, episode 145 is called Wings of Death Albatross. And if somebody were to put a gun to my head and say, what is the best episode of television you have ever seen? I might be like, well, I don't know what it is, but this is a strong contender. It's like 25 minutes long, keep you gleefully entertained from start to finish, and the episode consists of Lupin and the gang going up against this flying fortress, and it is just the definition of high adventure, where it's fast-paced, has enough action to make your head spin, it's got sex appeal, it's got humor, it's got daring escapes. It's the full package when it comes to what is the franchise of Lupin III represents. So that's what I would recommend in terms of like a good place to start. Get a subscription to Crunchyroll, watch it in Japanese with English subtitles, and watch episode 145 of Lupin III Part 2, Wings of Death Albatross. Prepare to have your mind blown. But my second recommendation would be start with Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro from 1979. That was my first encounter with the character, so I feel like it was an excellent place to start. But if you like to keep it old school, and if you follow this channel, you know that I always like to keep it old school. Lupin III Part 1 from 1971 has a ton of good episodes, but the episode I would recommend is episode 19, where it's got more double cross and more heists and more amazing music and more humor than you can possibly imagine. That would also be a fantastic place to start, because almost all these episodes are standalone adventures. It's not like these seasons have like huge arcs they have to keep track of. You can basically dip in and out with the best episodes. And luckily, there are some true animation historians and connoisseurs out there who have created these comprehensive lists of the best episodes and the best movies over the last, 57 years? And so I still consider myself a beginner when it comes to Lupin III, especially since I've mostly focused on the 1970s, which I think is an era that's really, really tough to beat. But if you like things to be a little bit more contemporary and more important, like things to be a little bit more adult and mature and transgressive, another one I would recommend is Lupin III, The Woman Called Fujiko Mine from 2012, where basically all the sexually suggestive material from earlier seasons becomes sexually explicit. I mean, just the title sequence alone to that series, which I will not share here because I don't want this video to get blocked by YouTube, but that entire title sequence is just wall-to-wall nudity from start to finish. And if you follow this channel, you'll know that I'm not afraid of a little nudity in film and television. But as I was watching it recently in Crunchyroll, I was like, all right, guys, like, I love it. Like, Fujiko Mine is looking incredible, but do you have anything else to offer apart from nudity? In any case, that is also available on Crunchyroll if you're curious. But here's the part of the video where I'm going to ask the viewers for recommendations when it comes to Lupin III, because I have so many blind spots when it comes to this series and this character. There's so much to consume. I've dipped in and out of some of the best parts of the 1970s, and I've dipped in and out of some of the best parts of the modern era. But one of the big ones that I've heard is incredible, which is very hard to find, is Lupin III, The Fuma Conspiracy from 1987. For whatever reason, it's not available to rent or buy anywhere online, and the only DVDs I could find were like $150. I was like, I want to see it, but I don't want to see it that much. But what are the best episodes and best movies and best OVAs of Lupin III? And I might even be willing to watch some of the live action if the live action is really good. In general, I tend to avoid live action adaptations of animation. But if there are a few episodes out there that are absolutely mind-blowing, definitely let me know. Because one of my main goals here on this channel in 2026 is going to be to watch a lot more anime. In 2025, I hit a wall where I realized, you know what? Like 9 out of 10 big budget Hollywood franchises not only like bore me to tears, but like filled me with like absolute rage. And I don't know if it's totally healthy for me to be constantly reviewing films and shows that I complete and totally, utterly fucking despise. But I made like the flip side of all this like hate and rage is like the blind love and adoration that I feel for a lot of really cool Japanese animation being made in the world of film and television. I'm not going to say that it's all equally good or made equally well, but over the last couple of months, I've been doing a lot of deep dives into the giant library that's available on Crunchyroll, and I've discovered so many cool fucking shows and movies. And so I'm basically going to press down the gas pedal where I've been following Japanese animation my entire life, off and on. But it's just such a huge ocean of cool shows and cool movies that I basically think for like the next 10 years, I want to watch all the good stuff. And one of the best ways to get started is to ask all the connoisseurs out there, what are your favorite animated shows and movies from Japan that have been made basically any time since like the 1950s? I'll watch anything from any era as long as it's really good. So for the rest of the year on this channel, I'm going to make a much more pronounced effort to try to review new shows and new movies. Like there's a season 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen coming out like in a week or two, which I'm definitely going to review the season 3 premiere for that. And there are a couple other shows and movies that I've already put on my calendar, but what I really want to do is start doing some top 10 lists, like, you know, top 10 favorite 80s feature films, top 10 favorite like 80s anime television shows and things like that. So expect a hell of a lot more videos on this front on this channel in the not so distant future. But I think with that, because I'm not going into spoilers, there's not that much more that I want to say about this movie apart from if you like Lupin III, take it for a test drive, but it doesn't quite equal up to the best stuff from the 1970s. But if you defer to or prefer the more modern stuff, who knows? You might think it's better than the 1970s stuff. I just feel like, you cannot go wrong watching shows and movies made by Hayao Miyazaki. So if that sounds right up your alley, the 1970s are screaming your name. But if you enjoyed this video, please let me know what you think down in the comments below, and remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.